In the last 35 years of my life, I've had one hell of a journey. Starting with a 1970 Ford Bronco I bought from my grandparents, through 8 project trucks I built for Ford, and 25 years of Obsession racing. This is Rick Swanson, driver of the Obsession Monster Truck, and this is my journey for you to follow. Well, you've seen the beginning of the Bronco and all the way through its first teardown. So now we've put it back together. We have done the hydraulic tilt front end. We got the 40s on it, the big tires on it. It's all painted, everything's ready to go. This was right after we got it put together, like the following weeks. This is a photo shoot for Four Wheeler magazine back in the day. We were down at Venice Beach taking that picture. As you can see, obviously right on the beach. 3 weeks later, we had a photo shoot with Rob Thomas from Neat Jeep and Dennis with the pink Land Cruiser, and it was for Off-Road Magazine. There's a picture of all 3 trucks put together. Here's another one of just me and the Jeep. This was, we all met at my place and went to the photo shoot. Kind of cool, seeing all the trucks parked out in front of the house. Later on that year, the Latest Craze calendar got a hold of me, and these were a couple shots we took for the Latest Craze calendar. That's Jill model in the truck. Couple different shots. Shortly after the Latest Craze magazine, we met Tom and Debbie Smith from Smittybuilt, and they supplied us with 3-inch tube bumpers. So that's when we painted the roll bar white, the bumpers white, and this is actually was the cover of Four Wheel Drive Action magazine back in 1990, I believe. Another picture. Went to a couple car shows with it like that, and believe it or not, it wasn't cool enough to win. So a couple months later, back to Pop Shop, and we're lifting the body off one more time. This will be teardown number 2. This time, we went extreme last time. We went over the top this time. Started with taking the body off, having its own room in the shop at this point in time. Started figuring out exactly what we were going to do. We knew we had to clean up the engine compartment, even though it was a hydraulic tilt front end. It was time to do some serious cleanup. So as you can see, we started taking stuff apart. We got marks. The white lines right there are where we were cutting. They were seams or mounts or something that came stock on the Bronco. So that's when we wanted to eliminate everything we could so we could make it as clean as possible in the engine compartment. With keeping in mind that we wanted a vehicle that I could take to any show and win trophies and dominate the show and have the one that goes, oh my God, that's so cool. We recut off all the shock brackets, remade them. As you can see here, I've cut the front of the firewall off. I've cut the whole floorboard out, and there's the flat floorboard that I made a whole brand new floorboard for. After doing all the work, we started painting all the parts. The one thing that was really cool at my dad's shop is we had a spray booth, and we had these racks that we could hang all the parts on and paint them and roll them around the shop. From all the parts being painted, we assembled the rolling chassis. This is when you can finally start seeing some of our sponsors. Interco Tires. Rancho Suspension gave us 27 chrome Rancho shocks. Globe transmission eliminated the 3-speed and made it an automatic. Drive shaft masters built the custom drive shafts to fit. We had a tunnel ram and dual carbs on it at this point. Here's a picture with the body on it. We're starting to do the interior. I just thought it looked really cool, so I took a tire off to take a picture of all the shocks hanging off it. Here's a picture underneath the front end. Shows the radius arm mounts, skid plate truss bar along with driveline hoops. This is one of the first shows we went to. This was at the Score Show, which would have been like 91-ish, I would guess. We had a big beach theme. It was me and John McKeon. He had his work truck in there, and we made this giant beach theme. And we got the little body, see the body laying in the sand? Surfboards, all kinds of stuff. That was all for the Score Show. With the truck redone, it was getting the attention. Magazines were calling. They wanted to do more articles on it. Sponsors wanted to be more a part of it because it was getting so much publicity. This was California Truck Jamboree. This is what we were doing. This was the beginning of the setup for the Dick CPEC booth in Costa Mesa at the California Truck Jamboree. We ended up having 3 trucks pulled up on 2 old, looked to be like cop cars. We used to do some pretty crazy displays. This was the following year at the Score Show. We built this whole building, brought in all the dirt, and it was sponsored by Superlift, and it was the Superlift Cantina. Here's a RG canning show. They had it out at the main hallway right in the front. You know, as you can see, we had stanchions, we had carpet. I mean, we used to go all out at these car shows. There was French 4x4. The guy's name was Gilles. That was for a French 4x4 magazine. And then my wife, Jill, was there modeling it. It was like a 3-page spread in their magazine. Then from here is a picture of all the Broncos. Peterson's 4-Wheeler magazine did this article. It was called Bronco City. So that was the show Bronco. That was my daily driver Bronco. And that was my wife's Bronco too. And then from there, you know, people always ask, man, so lucky you're do TV, movies, videos, all this with the monster truck. Well, what people don't understand, it started, my very first commercial was with the Bronco for a McDonald's ad. Way back in the day, in the 90s, early 90s. So that's how long I've been doing TV stuff. We had a lot of publicity with this Bronco. It got a lot of magazine ink. It was known all over the place. I was at SEMA one year, and if you go back to part 1, I said when I was a little kid, I grew up down the street from James Duff when he was racing the Baja with Broncos, which later became into James Duff Enterprises, which now is Duff Tough Broncos. I was walking down the aisle at SEMA one day, and I saw him walking the other direction, and his son, which is also named Rick, when I passed, told his dad, hey, that's the dude that owns the yellow Bronco. And so we stopped. He stopped me and, introduced himself, and I'm like, I know who you are. I need to introduce myself. You don't need to introduce yourself. Everybody knows who you are if you're a Bronco enthusiast. So I introduced myself, met his son Richard, and his daughter Suzanne. Now Susie runs the place. And And that was a beginning of a sponsorship for the Bronco. They started supplying all the parts and whatnot. I can remember telling him, and his kids weren't even born yet, that not only do I know who you are, the story between me and James Duff Enterprises, I told him, actually started when I was a little kid, when he used to keep the Pony Express race truck on Tower Street in Torrance. You should have seen his eyes light up like, huh? How did I know that? I go, I was the little kid you probably don't remember that used to ride my bicycle to your house and tell you my grandpa has a truck like this. Then fast forward to when I'm a junior in high school. In order to pass my English class, we had to write a business letter to a company, and part of your grade depended on if they would answer back. So I wrote a letter to them about lifting a Bronco. When me and my dad argued on how high I could, if a lift was even safe, let alone how high I could lift it, I wrote the letter and they answered me back. I think it was probably the only A I ever got in an English class, but I did get it. They wrote it back. So now we're fast forwarding, 10 years later, I'm running into them at SEMA. So there was a lot of history right there that people don't know. And to this day, both Mr. and Mrs. Duff and Suzanne all follow me on Facebook, and we still stay in contact. I have Suzanne's personal cell number, and we talk. I would really like to put a Bronco body on a monster truck someday, just because that's where I started. Now that you've seen what you thought you could do no more, next episode, tear down number 3.